Glory to God. Welcome back to Believer Central Prophecy Update on CUBN. Okay, how about for this segment, we're going to go to John chapter 11. And I'm going to show you something very cool. Let's see. John chapter 11. Let's go ahead and start at verse 1. Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. This is Mary Magdalene. Okay. The sister of Lazarus. She's the one that poured, she was the woman caught in adultery that he released. She was also the woman who poured the expensive ointment on his feet and wiped it with her hair. I shouldn't get ahead of myself. Verse 2. It was that Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So I should just read. Therefore his sisters sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. So they sent word to him. When Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. So he says, this sickness is not unto death. Well, Lazarus died, so they don't know what to think. And he says in verse 5, Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Okay, so they're children of God. When he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. See, he had to hang out and just let Lazarus die so he could go raise him for the glory of God. But it's interesting that he said this sickness is not unto death, but he dies, okay? But it's not, he dies because it's the will of God and not because of the sickness. He says the sickness is not unto death, okay? But for the glory of God. So, I mean, well, the sickness does kill him, okay? But it's not a sickness unto death. It's not his time to go and stay gone, okay? He says it's for the glory of God. Remember the man who was blind, and the disciples asked, well, is it his sin or his parents' sin? And Jesus said it's not because of sin. It's for the glory of God, so I could come and heal him. And everybody could see, you know. Okay, in verse 7, Then after that saith he to his disciples, Let us go into Judea again. His disciples say unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth, because there's no light in him, and he can't see where he's going. So you have light and dark here. And the light is the word, and seeing the word to where you can understand it and absorb it and retain it. But if it's dark and you can't see, you're going to fall in a big hole or over a cliff or whatever. If you can't see where you're going, you're walking blindly. You might as well be blind. In verse 11, These things said he, and after that he saith unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go that I may awake him out of sleep. Then said his disciples, Lord, if he sleep, he shall do well, or he'll be fine. Howbeit Jesus spake of his death. But they thought that he had spoken of taking of rest and sleep. See, Jesus knew Lazarus was dead, and nobody had to tell him. He's God in a flesh body. Then said Jesus unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there. Because if Jesus had been there, Lazarus wouldn't have died. Like Mary and Martha both said, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And that's right. If you're with Jesus, you're not going to die. He said, I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent that ye may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, unto his fellow disciples, let us go also, that we may die with him. So notice, this is Thomas, the one that wouldn't believe without seeing after he rose from the dead. He's so devoted to Jesus. He's saying, let's all go with him and we'll just die with him. He's devoted to Jesus, but he wasn't permitted to believe without seeing. So he's one of those who is a representative of the tribulation saints, where they don't believe until they see, but once they see, they're devoted. Okay? Let us go also, that we may die with him. That's Thomas saying that. Then when Jesus came, he found that he had lain in the grave 4 days already. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off. This is verse 19 of John chapter 11. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. You know how people come around when you have a family member pass away. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him. But Mary sat still in the house. Now I've wondered why Mary stayed in the house, but because she's the one that loves Jesus, I mean, with her whole heart. She just adores Jesus. But she's just so sad, you know, about her brother, that she just sits there. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. You know, if you had been here, he wouldn't have died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it thee. Jesus saith unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. Martha saith unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? Now Martha, she's looking around. I mean, keep in mind that she's looking at the perspective of everybody dies eventually. Okay? And so she doesn't understand what he's saying. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. Do you know what that means? What it means is that his definition of death is different than ours. Okay? He's saying, he that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. What that means is that and the scripture also says that we never taste death. Let me get that one. Now, we know that we leave our body, okay? To us, from our perspective, death is leaving your body, okay? But that's not death according to what Jesus is saying. See, we don't ever experience real death. What we experience is what he calls in Psalm 23, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. We don't face real death. We face a shadow of death. Well, what can a shadow do to you? Nothing. It's just a shadow. All right? It's just a shadow. The light shines on something and it produces a shadow. What he's saying is that his definition of death and ours is different. See, we view death as leaving our flesh body and the flesh body becoming not animated anymore, okay? That's what we think death is. But it's not, because he's saying, he that believeth in me, Though he were dead, yet shall he live. Now, we're talking about Lazarus here. Lazarus died, left his body. What happened to him then? We know what happened to him then. In Luke chapter 16, keep your spot there in John 11. Luke chapter 16. Now, Lazarus was still alive after he left his flesh body. Still alive, still aware. He wasn't dead. His body, he just left his body, took his body off like you'd take off your clothes. Our bodies are like a spacesuit. We need them to function in this world. But they aren't who we are. We're still alive even if we're not inside the body. Okay? So over here in Luke 16, you see, in verse 23, and in hell he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. When Lazarus died, this is where he went. He went to paradise. And he's here for the testimony of the rich man in hell. So Lazarus is in Abraham's bosom. He's being comforted. And see, he's alive. And he's got all his physical senses still. He can hear, see, talk, and he's not in his body. The rich man in hell can see him. So we have some kind of a spiritual body, even now when we leave our body. Lazarus, this is where he went when he left his body and died. So Jesus is saying, back over here in John 11, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, like Lazarus, though he were dead, leaving your body, yet shall he live. You're alive when you leave your body. You don't lose consciousness. You're just as alive as you feel now, probably more so, when you leave your body. You don't experience death. We don't taste death. Death, from our definition in this world, yes, because we do leave our body. But he's saying, even if you leave your body, you're still alive. He says, he that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. See, Lazarus was still alive, even down there in Abraham's bosom. He was alive and able to talk and see and hear, and he had a body. He could be seen by the rich man across that great gulf. Okay? So Jesus is saying that even though you leave your body, you don't ever experience death. You're still alive. And then he says, and whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Now, he's not saying you're never going to leave your body. He's saying you're never going to die a death according to what real death is. You're not going to ever see death. Okay? You'll leave your body, but you're still alive and conscious and aware of everything. You're still alive outside your body just like you are inside it. Okay? So what he's saying is we don't experience death. We leave our body, but we're still alive. Okay? I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. So you're still alive when you leave your body. You do not experience real death. O death, where is thy victory? O grave, where is thy sting? Okay? You're still alive when you leave your body. So that's why he's saying to her, and whoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. That means I might leave my body here, but I'm never going to die. I'll be alive somewhere else if I leave my body here. I'll be alive there. I won't cease to exist at any point. I'm still alive, conscious. I have a body that can be seen by others, even though I don't have my body here renewed yet. We learn all these things from this. And he says, whosoever liveth and believeth in me, that would be like us that are alive right now, shall never die. He took our death, so we don't experience death anymore. Now, leaving your body, which is the world's definition of death, yes, we do that. But that's not real death. That's not death. Okay? Not for us. We're still alive. So he's saying, whoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. And then he says, believest thou this? Well, she doesn't know what he said. She has no idea what he said. Because she's in a graveyard when he's telling her these things. And she looks around and she sees everybody dies at some point. But see, that's death according to the world's definition and not according to God's definition. Lazarus was still alive. He was just in another location. Okay? So he asked her, do you believe this? And she saith unto him, yea, Lord. Well, she says, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. That's not what he asked her. Have you ever noticed that? He said, do you believe this? And she says, yes. And then says, I believe that you're the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. Well, that's not what he asked her. She doesn't understand what he has said. And she becomes uncomfortable talking to Jesus one-on-one because she doesn't understand what he's saying. So it says, and when she had so said, she went her way and called Mary, her sister, secretly, saying, the master is come and calleth for thee. You know why she called her secretly? She's telling her, the master's come and calleth for thee. Well, Jesus didn't call for Mary. There's no testimony here of him calling for her. What happened is Martha got really uncomfortable when Jesus started talking about, he says, whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. And she's standing in a graveyard looking at how everybody has died. She knows how the world works, that everybody dies at some point. And so she doesn't know what he's talking about. She has no idea. Now, we understand because we have the testimony of where Lazarus went. Okay? So we know what's going on with Lazarus when he's not in his body. That's convenient, isn't it? It's really good information to have. So she goes, she's uncomfortable because she doesn't understand what he's saying. And a lot of believers don't understand what he's saying, okay? And so she's uncomfortable talking to him one-on-one. And so she says, he says, do you believe this? And she doesn't understand it. So she's like, yeah, sure. I believe you're the Son of God. Well, that's not what he asked. But from her perspective, she did not understand what he said. So she kind of got uncomfortable talking to him one-on-one. It says she went and called Mary, her sister, secretly. She wants Mary to go and deal with him instead of her, because the things he's saying to her don't make sense to her, but she does believe he's the Son of God. Okay? And she's thinking, what? So she goes and she calls her sister secretly to where nobody can hear because she's lying. Jesus didn't call for Mary. But Martha doesn't want to deal with him anymore. She's come back and she's like, he's talking to me about stuff I don't understand. So can you, she wants Mary to go and deal with him. But she is a child of God, Martha is, but she doesn't understand what he's saying. And she called her sister Mary secretly, saying, the master has come and calleth for thee. Well, no, he didn't, but, In verse 29, as soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came unto him, which is why her sister went to her secretly and said, he wants you. In verse 30, now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in that place where Martha met him. The Jews then which were with her in the house and comforted her when they saw Mary, that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, she goeth unto the grave to weep there. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. See, both sisters are saying the same thing. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping, which came with her, he groaned in the spirit. See, he wasn't sad for Lazarus dying because he's about to bring Lazarus back, right? But what caused Jesus to weep in this situation was the grief that Martha and Mary, they were just devastated to lose their brother. And all of these people who came, they were all weeping. They were all so sad about losing Lazarus. And that's what caused Jesus to weep, is the grief he saw from those who were feeling that tremendous loss of Lazarus. And for the verse 34, and said, where have you laid him? And they said unto him, Lord, come and see. And then 35, Jesus wept. That's like the shortest scripture in the Bible. Jesus wept. Now, he didn't weep because Lazarus died. He wept because of the grief he was perceiving from Mary and Martha and the people that came to mourn. In verse 36, then said the Jews, behold how he loved him. Jesus is looking at them and thinking, if you only knew the hope, if you only knew that he's still alive, okay, if you just only knew, you wouldn't be grieving like this. In verse 37, and some of them said, could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind have caused that even this man should not have died? Well, sure. That's why Jesus didn't come sooner. Verse 38, Jesus therefore again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Jesus said, take ye away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days. And, they didn't embalm him back then. They just wrapped him in cloth and put him in the tomb. And so after 4 days, it's just the decay is really rank at 4 days in the body under those conditions. In verse 40, Jesus saith unto her, said I not unto thee that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And I knew that thou hearest me always, but because of the people which stand by, that's why he's praying out loud. But because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he had thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus saith unto them, loose him and let him go. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did believed on him. See, when these are the miracles of God. Remember, he would do miracles, and the tares, they still couldn't believe. They see, it's like the children that came out of Egypt. God had raised up a whole bunch of tares among their numbers during that time. And when they came out of Egypt, all those tares would start grumbling and murmuring and complaining and rah, rah, rah. In verse 46, but some of them went their ways to the Pharisees and told them what things Jesus had done. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council and said, what do we? For this man doeth many miracles. These were legit miracles of God, and they knew that. And they're saying, what do we do? Well, I would say question him about where he was born and find out that he's the Messiah. If you see the miracles of God in him, duh. In verse 48, if we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. That's far enough for what I was trying to get. Oh, we got 1 minute. But I wanted you to see what Jesus is saying in verses 25 and 26 is vital to understand. He says in Thessalonians that we don't grieve like those who have no hope. We can know that when our loved ones pass, their body may stay here, but they're still alive outside their body. They're still alive. They're just in a different location. Okay? And we will see them again. They aren't dead. They aren't in soul sleep or anything like that. They're alive. When you leave your body, you're still alive. We'll take a quick break. Be right back.